Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Al Nicoletti Show. We're here a Wednesday night, the season 5 premiere. It's another night in the studio. I am so happy to be back with all of you. I love the show. I love the guests, and I love the fans and followers that have been watching us over the last 5 seasons, and it has been incredible. And we're back. And as you can tell, we have a whole new redesign of the studio. We transformed it from the last couple seasons to this season. We're so excited, and I can't wait to jump in. And I got to do a shout out to my team. And if it wasn't for my team, we wouldn't be in this spot. Between getting the studio done, getting the trailer, the season 5 trailer, and just doing everything that we do when it comes to production, videos, setting everything up. My team is everything. And I'm just sitting here. I'm the host, but it's the team that's behind it. So got to say, Michael Williams, welcome back to the show. Season 5, you're the man. Taylor Nasta, I know you're out there watching, or you'll catch it later. I love it. It's working beautifully. I got to do a shout out to James Hodgkiss, who's putting the intros and outros together. I mean, the whole thing just comes so well together. It's amazing when you see it, and I'm truly blessed. I'm truly grateful. I thought about that the other day. It's amazing having the show. It's amazing having all of you, and I couldn't be more excited to get this season kicked off. So I got my pen, I got my paper. I'm ready for season 5. So let's rock this thing. Hey, everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their communities that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate. And we're always going to bring the best guests to bring the best value to you wherever you are, no matter what state you are in, what kind of niche you're going after, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or maybe you've been doing this for 20 years. We want to provide the most value to you on how you can help your business take it to another level. I can't wait to bring on my guest tonight. And I got to tell everybody, if you want more episodes like this, you know to check us on the social apps. Listen on your favorite podcasting app, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, scan the QR code. You'll find it right there. And you know, we're always dropping episodes. We go live every Wednesdays at 9 p.m. right on the dot. And you don't want to miss the value that these guests bring. So follow us there. And I got to say, you got to stay tuned for Kendall LeJeune tonight. I love this guy. Met him at the Hero event in Houston. We kicked it off. It was an amazing meetup. And Kendall is full of gems and information when it comes to land business mindset. And we're going to dive in on a lot of things. And you want to stay tuned to the end because he's going to talk about one of the number one lead sources that people are not paying attention to. And I think that could bring a lot of value to investors that are trying to get more deals and focus on more lead generation in 2024. And before we dive in with Kendall LeJeune, I got to do my opening thoughts tonight. Al Nicoletti opening thoughts for season 5. I got to tell you, again, I'm truly blessed to have the team that I do. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by the team members and everything that we're doing. And I have to tell you, and I want to give back to you all, something I want everybody to do to start the year, because I did it before January. I made sure I wrote these things down, and I want everybody today. I want people to commit to this. I'd love to see everyone commit to this. I'd like to see what worked for you in your business and what has not worked in your business. Go back to last year in 2023. What worked and what hasn't worked? And I want you to make 2 columns. I want you to do on the left side everything that worked, everything that you can think of that worked in your business, okay? And when you map that out, I want you to map that whole thing out, and whatever you put on the left side, you have to double and triple down on those items, okay? When I built out my list, I did it because I said, I got to get back to the basics. I got to get back to what worked. What worked? Where did leads come in? What was happening in my business? That is what's going to set you apart in growth for your business in 2024. Okay. That's the left side. Now, on the right side, you're going to put down everything that did not work, right? Things that did, you tried it, it did not work. You tried this, did not work, right? Or it was a waste of time, or you just it didn't seem to be jiving with what you're doing in your business. Okay. I want you to write those things down. The things on the right, it's time to eliminate it. The things that didn't work, that's not growth. That's just redundancy, and you're not going to get anywhere with it. Anything on the right-hand side, I can tell you for 2024, I've eliminated. The things on the left-hand side, you double, triple down, and what you have to do with it is you got to go deeper. You got to map it out. You got to fine tune it. You got to refresh it. You got to polish it. You got to nurture it. You got to grow it, and you got to love it. Because those are the things that are going to grow your business. Don't listen to anybody else tell you how you run your business. How you run your business is going to be very different than how somebody else runs their business. You cannot compare yourself to others. You have to focus on what you're doing and what works for you. And that is what I have to say to you all. And what I'd love to know from you all is, what are your opening thoughts on this? Tell me, what is one thing, and drop it in the comments. What is one thing that absolutely worked for you last year that you're going to double and triple down on in 2024? Because that is going to set the tone of what's going to happen this year. And that is opening thoughts from Al Nicoletti. So without further ado, I am so excited to welcome our guest, Kendall LeJeune, to the show. Kendall, let's go.
Wow. How's it going, man?
I'm fired up. What about you?
I can tell. Listen, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so honored to be your guest of season 5 premiere. The studio looks incredible. So I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for you to be here, and I can't wait to dive in on what's working and what's not working. And Kendall, we got to start with the land space, right? What is working in the land space? There's a lot. There's a lot. There's so much. He's taking his time thinking about this right now. We're gonna wait for Kendall to come on. I can tell you all what's going on with the land space. It's booming. He'll come back in a second. We'll drop it. Mike, we're also plugged in on the hardwire too, right, on the internet. Okay, yeah. So it's got to be on his side. So I'll tell you what's working in the land space for a lot of investors that I've seen is staying true to what you're seeing and doing and keep after it, right? When a lot of times investors start pivoting and they want to go outside of what's working, right? So Kendall will talk about wholesaling, but a lot of people, they'll start their journey with wholesaling and then they'll automate it. They'll hire a lot of people, they'll hire VAs. And then what they'll do is they want to start going to something bigger, right? They'll want to start going to something. Is he on? Okay, let's bring him back on. Go ahead, Kendall, we're good?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. I don't know what happened.
I was about to go on a whole 5-minute rant right there.
Go. We'll listen to it.
No.
Let's do it.
Well, I'll tell you what seems to happen is a lot of investors will focus on that one thing for like 5 years. They'll make a lot of money from it. They'll grow their team from it. But then what seems to happen is they want to start going after bigger and better things. But then they start finding out that's consuming a whole lot of time and it wasn't what they thought, right?
Right.
And I know we kind of talked about this backstage about what's working, and to you, wholesaling's killing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, especially in this market, I think that, I talk to a lot of people about what's working in their land businesses, and, some really, heavy hitters are talking about wholesaling. And that's really interesting because, it's been often thought that wholesaling is just for beginners, and that's where you get started and you sort of evolve out of that. And while that can be true, I think that whenever you're in a market that's really volatile or that you might have like a lot of risk associated, wholesaling is significantly uh, less risky, right? So it's less risky. It ties up a lot less capital. So we're seeing a lot of people. I mean, I'm talking about heavy hitter, seven-figure land flippers that are going heavy into wholesaling, especially in this market in 2024. So yeah, it's something that I think that once you sort of start getting your legs underneath you, you figure out, okay, what does wholesaling look like now? What do we start doing if we use our own capital in our deals and start progressing through that evolution? It's totally okay to come back to that tool. Keep that tool in your tool belt because that's going to help you to weather the storm.
Yeah, and I can't remember if it was Tom Kroll or someone else I was meeting at a mastermind for dinner, and I remember them saying like, a lot of these people just start, seeing the shiny object and they want to venture elsewhere, but the ones that double down in it, the ones that, keep it going, keep the cash flow going and use those funds to keep growing the team are the ones that are just going to keep grinding, keep being here and keep being in that picture that seems to work in the land space. I mean, it probably works in single family too, right? But it seems to be working for land. And I gotta say, when it comes to marketing, direct mail is still crushing it.
Yeah, yeah. So, you mentioned something kind of, about shiny object syndrome. I think that any entrepreneur that's listening to this, especially if you kind of fall into that visionary camp, it's so easy to be like, okay, we're running this, we're doing this, but then like, oh, I heard about this incredible opportunity to make money, and then start diverting attention that way. And it can be really easy in real estate because we all know that it's, there's like a million and one ways to skin the cat. And in land specifically, there's so much that you can do with land. And so it's really easy to sort of get off track and want to chase different rabbits down different rabbit holes. But yeah, I think that it's really important to find what's working. When you were talking about the exercise, I was kind of thinking about what's on the left-hand side of my column. And man, some of the things that's interesting about it is what I realize when I'm looking at this, there's a pattern that a lot of that stuff is not new. Like, a lot
Right.
of the stuff on my left-hand column is not new. A lot of times it's not fun, it's not sexy, but it's stuff that I know that works, right? And so I think it's really important to, like you said, double down on what's working for you.
Yeah, I agree. And when it comes to just business in general, if it's working, why do something else? I'm constantly reminding myself of that when a lot of people will try to bring suggestions, ideas on like, different things that, you could do this or you could do that. And it's like you got to block all that noise out and you got to go back to that what works, right? And I got to say for people that don't know, Kendall loves land, loves the investing in land, loves helping entrepreneurs with land. And while we're getting into like the side of land, the ultimate brilliance of Kendall LeJeune is the mindset and the culture shifts and the culture of excellence. So you don't want to go anywhere because what he knows is how to build that team, how to keep the team motivated, what to look for, right? Land is such a hot topic, even in my probate world right now, that we cannot not talk about it. We cannot not talk about the fact that this is one of the greatest opportunities we have right now. And so when it comes to marketing and getting these leads, what's another thing that's like killing it right now for you?
Yeah, so you mentioned direct mail earlier. I think the reason why direct mail has been around for so long is because it just works. It's a tried and true fundamental. It works, but I'll tell you, one of the things that we are having the most success with in my business right now, and anyone that will listen to this, all of my clients, all of my students, I tell them this is what you got to do if you want to start getting leads to flow to you. Is we actually work with Lead Mining Pros, Nicholas Nick over at Lead Mining Pros. Going to give out a shot to him
Love
because
it.
absolutely incredible. And we work with his American cold callers. And so they will call. And I mean, I'm telling you, I have clients that will get like something like 60 leads in one campaign for a fraction. I'm talking probably at least 30% of what they would pay for a direct mail campaign. And so we've had a lot of success with American cold callers. Those leads come in, and those are really, really warm, motivated leads that we push through our pipeline. And so anyone that will listen, I'm telling them right now, go check out Lead Mining Pros, American Cold Callers. That's the ticket. Right now, that's what is really, really crushing it.
Yeah, and I'm hearing that too on the messy, crazy deals that I see. A lot of it is not the inbound marketing, right? A lot of it's not the inbound PPC, Facebook. A lot of it's the outbound. Something about the outbound, and of course, you have direct mail, which is a great way to get the attention of somebody. But I've also been hearing that the cold calling is still king when it
Yeah,
comes to
yeah.
getting deals.
The thing that there are a couple of things I really like about cold calling. I think that, obviously the price as a business owner, I love the fact that it's a lot, it's a lot cheaper than direct mail. But the other thing is I love the speed and the velocity of it, right? So like with mail, you send out mail, you have to wait for the mail to go out through snail mail. Finally, the snail mail comes back in, and then, maybe they'll call, maybe they'll think about it, maybe they'll hold on to it for a minute. But with cold calling, I mean, like they have to make a decision right there. Like, are they interested or are they not?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, we'll get flooded. I mean, like, we really have to, like, I always suggest for a campaign, even if it's a smaller campaign, I always advise, like, stretch that out over a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. Because if you hit all of your cold calls like in 1 week, you're not going to have, like, you're just not going to have time to be able to process all of those leads. And so I love the velocity of those leads. So for anyone that's looking for like fast leads, how do I fill my pipeline? How do I get a jump start on my campaign? Cool, do direct mail, but God, cold calling, that's the way to start.
Yeah, I've heard that recently too, and that's great advice for people that want to either get into it or are just questioning. Wait a second, are we doing the right thing? Right, that happens to seasoned investors too. Like, wait, are we keeping up with what other people are doing? And that's what's
Right?
working right now, right? Uh,
Totally.
and I was talking to Kendall about a week ago, and we were getting into like stuff that we were going to talk about. And one of the questions I asked him, I was like, "Hey man, like what's hot in land right now?" Like everyone asked that question of like, "What's hot?" Like and it's like FOMO, right? Everybody
Yeah.
wants like,
Yeah.
What am I missing out on? Am I missing out on this county or this state?" And and I love Kendall's answer. So I got to ask you, so you could tell everybody, like, what's hot in land? What's going on?
Yeah. What's hot with land? I don't even remember what we what I said last week.
I know
Um,
I know you said you're like, always begin with the end in mind and don't overcomplicate the market. And if there's demand, people will buy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So thank you for reminding me. So, I think
Took
that
notes, man.
yeah, obviously, and it's great. It's great. I'm glad that you did. So, I get a lot of questions about how do I get into land? What do I need to do in land? And a lot of the questions that I get has to do with like how do I pick a market? Like everyone thinks that like there's some magic, like shake some cat bones and then read the tea leaves, and that will guide you to this market. But you know, it can be super complicated if you make it complicated, right? Like there's lots of variables that we could look at. Path of growth. Look at, I talked to some people that said, hey, I actually like look at the U-Haul rentals and where those are going out to try to track that variable to see if that area is growing. I always come back to fundamentals. We're just talking about fundamentals of business. What works? Why does it work? And I think that honestly, it's not a super sexy answer, but if you're looking to figure out a market, is there demand there, right? Like plain and simple, are people moving there? Are people living there? Are people working there? Does it have a highway nearby? Is there a Walmart? Is there a job center somewhere? And if so, take a look at it and look at what's actively selling and what's actively listed, right? So if there's a healthy balance between the two of listings and sold comps, then do a test market campaign there, right? So that's a really hot topic. Like everyone feels like if I do a ton of work in the beginning and like spend all of this time trying to find the perfect market, then everything else will be like, easy as pie, but it actually just doesn't work that way, right?
Yeah.
So finding that market and then just committing to testing and iterating, send out some marketing.
Yeah, I remember too, Brent Bowers was on, and Brent does a lot of land, and I
Brent's
asked him the same.
fantastic.
Yeah, he's the man. And I asked him the same question, and he basically said what you said, and it really came down to price point and demand, right? So I remember we zoomed in on this one county in Florida that was like, who's going there, right? But it didn't matter about who's going there. There's always going to be a buyer for that particular property if the price is right.
Yeah.
So, like you said, if the demand for that price point or that particular area is hot, then it's where someone will go there. I could just tell you, like in my world, like when I hear hot market, and I think like what's going on. I just see like the bubbling situations that hey, I got this thing in Lakeland. Hey, I got this thing in Marion. Hey, I got like over and over and over. I'm like, what's going on in Lakeland and Marion? You know,
Right.
10, 15 years ago, like nothing.
Right. Yeah. 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 I think that, and I get it. Like people don't want to spend a lot of money on a campaign that may not, be fruitful. But at the end of the day, I talked to so many different people in the land space, and one of the things that comes up a lot when we're talking about markets is like, Al, you may have a marketing campaign to a particular, county in Florida, and I could send the exact same mail piece, the exact same list, the exact same county and everything, and you get deals and I don't. It's just a matter of like the luck of the draw. It doesn't mean that that's a terrible county. It doesn't mean that it's not a good market. But I think that kind of thinking about this in the sort of longer overarching timeline. You're not just deciding if a market is good or not based on 1 month of a campaign's performance, right? So
Right.
testing and iterating, that's always my go-to when it comes to picking markets. Like, yes, we do the best that we can by looking at a few variables. Is there demand in that area? And then you just have to, commit to doing it a few months. Like send some cheap marketing out, see what the response is.
Yeah, and I got to give a shout out to Tyler Austin because Tyler with REISIF, like he posts about this concept a lot in his group. He'll talk about you hit him with the mail, you hit him with another mail, then you hit him with a call, then you hit him with that, and it's like you can't just do it once, you can do it twice, and sometimes one of the benefits to being in this space is there's Facebook groups, there's a lot of different forums, and I'm not even doing this. And I see the Facebook forums and people are sharing.
Yeah.
They're giving the playbook away on strategies to, getting that follow-up, getting that reach out. No matter if you can't get in touch with them the first time, a lot of people just give up, right? And we're talking more on the acquisition on the seller side, not like somebody on the buyer side, whether you're wholesaling or something. But it's people give up on those, and it's just crazy to see when people are giving the strategies away. Like Kendall's talking about this, Tyler's talking about this. This is where you really want to pay attention, and I can tell you that there is definitely money in that follow up, even in the probate side. Like I mean, I see it on my end when people follow up or I'm even following up. It's this business isn't hard. Like
Right.
respond to emails, get back to text messages, get back to the voicemails. This business isn't hard.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. The money is in the follow-up. I think that probably should be like engraved somewhere in every single entrepreneur's office because it's so true. I mean, especially when you're talking about, if we look at what we do as, we are professional real estate investors. We do dozens of transactions a year. Some people do hundreds of transactions a year in their business. The people that you are buying from typically are only doing one or two or maybe three transactions in their entire lifetime, right? And so they are not as comfortable as we are with doing something like a real estate transaction. So it does take some nurturing right? They have to know, like, and trust you. We've all heard that before. There's some education that has to happen. There's a process that has to happen. You know, how many times I've talked to people and they say, Kendall, every time I reach out to someone to make an offer, they want double and their property's not worth double. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're going to have to educate them. How do you educate them? It's not just through one phone call and saying, hey, your property is not worth that much. This is how much I'm willing to pay. It's through a calculated process of saying, hey, listen, just want to let you know, this is what's going on in your market this month. This is what the property prices are. This is what the median income of this area is. This is how much people are paying. And so it's over time that people start to realize, like, oh, maybe my property is not worth that much. But we don't get that opportunity to educate them and turn that lead into an actual customer unless we take them through that process, right? And so I think it's really important that we do build like really strong follow-up processes in our business. If not, you're just throwing money away, right?
Right. And this goes to the left-hand column of what's working. And what's working is you got to follow up with these people, right? Whether it's on the business side or just trying to get back with them about something that you needed to talk to them about. It doesn't have to just be the lead itself. It could be the conversation. It's always in that follow-up. And a lot of us talk about it. It's pretty sure it was a quote card at one point. Yeah, it's something that comes up, but a lot of people don't apply it, right? A lot of what we talk about has to be applied. And that's why I bring up the two sides of those columns, because if it's working, that's what you have to double, triple down on, right? But when people get into this industry, Kendall, they don't sometimes know what they're really getting into. And that's what you called land truth bombs. So I wanted to talk about that side of it too. And I'll give you some my land truth bombs that I've seen, not as an investor, but I've seen enough that I could give some.
Love
So
it.
yeah, you go first. What are some land truth bombs that people should be aware of if you're going to get into this game?
Yeah, so I think first of all, expectations are really important, right? Like I think a lot of people that may not be used to the real estate space, they, follow a few people on Instagram and they think like, "Oh, if I send out one marketing campaign, I'm going to now become a millionaire." Right? The truth is like you have to first fill your pipeline. You have to fill your pipeline with leads. That can take 1 to 2 months before you really start seeing some kind of traction with that. The second component is what we just talked about, right? Like the money's in the follow up. So if you think about a lead as a seed and you're nurturing that seed through your follow up process, giving a little bit of water, giving a little bit of love, giving a little bit of sunshine, right? Finally, that lead will sprout into an actual deal, but that takes sometimes several months, right? We're closing or we're actually getting properties under contract now in my business that we started first talking to these people like 19 months ago. And so it's long term. And so when you think about that, it's really important to think about that having an expectation of just going in and knowing, okay, I'm going to do consistent marketing. That is huge. Turn off your marketing, you kill your pipeline. A lot of people they think like, oh man, like the business isn't going well. I need to like pull back my expenses. So I'm going to stop marketing. That will kill your pipeline and you start all over again.
Yeah.
Right. And so keep some kind of marketing going. So the biggest truth bomb when it comes to land is that it can be fast-ish. I mean, I've seen people, I myself, in my very first land deals, I got under contract and I found a buyer, closed, funded within 12 days. Doesn't always happen that way though, right? Majority of the time, it takes lots of follow-up, lots of nurturing. So just have the expectation that it's going to take a couple of months before you start seeing some deals come to fruition. That's probably one of the biggest, sort of truth bombs when it comes to land.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, you were working on one for what, 19 months. I mean, there have been probates that all of a sudden 3 years later they're reaching out and they're like, "Hey, we're ready," and I'm like, I don't even remember what happened.
Yeah.
Wait, who is this? What is this? Right? And so, and then you're like surprised, but they kept your name, they kept your contact. You followed up with them numerous times, but it came a point where they were like, I got to get back to you. And it works. And just going off what you were talking about, like you can't pull back marketing, right? And if you start pulling back marketing, that could dry the well, right?
Sure.
And you want to talk about Nick. I don't know if Nick's watching. I think I saw he had Nick, you're the man. He talked about this when I saw him at Family Mastermind. I think it went to more like Facebook stuff, Facebook leads, and more inbound leads. But there was a point where I think he said it was like over COVID where people pulled back their marketing. And what happened is he went like, when they pulled back, he went all in on marketing and got so many leads just from doing that. Right. If you
Ab-
pull back marketing, somebody else is going to get that deal. Somebody else is going to get that lead. And
Absolutely.
and you can't, Kendall, I don't know if you saw it in the market, but we saw that happen I saw it happen November, December. You could tell everybody pulled back their marketing just for
Yep.
the holidays
Holidays. Yeah.
and it's like, if you do that, you're going to miss out on deals.
Exactly right. Because, that's something that I talk to my students a lot about is they're like, well, Kendall, I don't know if I should be sending marketing because, it's a few days before Christmas. And I'm like, listen, end of the year, that's when a lot of people start, they're motivated because they need money, they need something. And so if everyone else is pulling back because they're just going to like wait until the new year to start, like you can fill that gap and reach those sellers and start communication without having that much competition. And so I love that idea of like when people pull back, like lean into it.
Yes. Yes. Lean in, go for it. What do you have to lose on that? Right. Um,
Absolutely.
but here's what I tell you all, like that I've seen. And Kendall, if you have anything to say on this, you just let me know. Some land truth bombs that I've seen, you all have to do your due diligence on that property. You got to check for wetland issues. You got to check for environmental issues. You got to check for these title issues. You have to run your numbers. With land deals, land deals are some of the tightest deals that I've seen, where somebody's buying it for 2,000 and then they're wholesaling it for 5. $3,000 spread with a whole bunch of environmental wetland issues is not going to happen. And if you're going to get experts involved on that deal, you gotta make sure. So what I've seen is land is a great opportunity. I mean, if you're going after 1 acre, 10 acres, huge opportunity. And of course, you got to be careful with the landlocked stuff. There's so many angles, but you got to check and do your due diligence with inspections and wetlands, and those are just deal killers. Deal
Absolutely.
killers.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier that sometimes price can fix everything. There's a buyer for everything. I mean, I've interviewed some people on my podcast that like they love landlocked stuff. And I'm like, who's buying this stuff? And they're like, man, you would be surprised that the people that will buy stuff that you can only get to via airboat, but they want it just because like they go hunting there or like they just want it because they want to own a piece of property. And so those types of buyers are much more willing to like put a couple thousand down and pay a couple $100 a month just to say that they own property.
Yeah.
Right. But I think, to your point, another land truth bomb is that there's a lot of talk in the land space about, hey, it's just as easy to do a big deal as it is to do a small deal. And while I think that that is true to some degree, there's a huge difference between doing an infill lot, which is a vacant lot in a neighborhood that hasn't been built on yet, versus like a large subdivide, right? 100-acre subdivide, or even having a 10-acre piece of property, 20-acre piece of property. Even if you're not going to subdivide it, realize that those sellers are very, very different people. So while I would agree that like, hey, if you're in the process of doing a 20-acre parcel deal, that may be very similar to doing a 50 to a 70-acre parcel, where maybe the margins could even be a little bit higher because you have a value add um, opportunity there. But the thing that I do want to, just kind of point out from a truth bomb perspective is that those should have completely different expectations from a timeline standpoint, right? So like with an infill lot, you can flip an infill lot in 2 weeks. That's not an issue. A larger lot, subdivide lot, that could take a year, 2 years, right? I know people have been working on like, entitlement deals for 3 years. Granted, it's a much larger payday. You're talking about seven-figure paydays versus, a few $1,000s. But it's not as easy to say as doing a small deal is the same thing as doing a big deal, right? And
Yeah.
so I think from a mindset perspective, I think that it's really there are a lot of similarities because like uh, a $2,000 deal that you do is the same as a 20,000, same as a $200,000 deal in terms of the mindset that you have to have around that. But really understanding that it's a different type of seller that's going to respond to a different type of marketing, that's going to respond to a different type of follow-up process, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that that's super important to kind of keep in mind as you're thinking about what types of properties you're going after, and also to talk about sort of coming back to your exercise because man, that's such a great exercise. It
Thank you.
reminded me that after the first year or so in my land business, my partner and I were like, man, look, we're crushing it in these infill lots. That's what we mainly focused on. My background was coming from the house wholesaling market, and so we just were able to easily apply that to infill lots. And then one day we decided we're like, we've heard this that it's what's the difference between doing a 2,000 deal or $200 $200,000 deal? Let's just do that. Let's switch our marketing to that. It's the same process, right? So we switch our marketing over to doing large deals, going after larger deals, and it completely crushed our pipeline because like we didn't have the infrastructure to support the types of conversations and the amount of conversations that we had to have with that $200,000 seller because
Mhm.
now these people, this is a multi-generational property and they're not just going to sign a contract the way an infill lot owner would, right?
Right.
And so I think that it's really important as you are going after different types of deals, like find your bread and butter, what's working for you, dig into that, lean into that. And then if you want to go after different types of deals, my advice is always to add to. Don't ever just stop marketing. And I just take it from experience, from my experience. Don't ever just stop marketing and then pivot, right? Like always add to. And I think John Alexander, who is just one of the godfathers of land flipping,
Oh yeah.
we talked about that at quite some length. Is that you always want to add to what you're currently doing versus okay, that was working. Now let's evolve and do something completely different, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. At least diversify, right? At least keep this automated and maybe you bring on one or two deals because like you said, like if you get that like 50 acre or even let's just go 10 acre and it's not subdivided, now you're having to go to this and you don't even know the zoning for that lot either. I mean, and especially if you want it to be residential, but then you find out it's commercial or agriculture, like how do you now you got to rezone it, then you got to go to the board and you got to subdivide the lots, get go through that whole procedure, right? And it's more than like you said, the info lot. So there's a lot, right? I mean, land is fantastic. I mean, the truth
Yeah.
bombs,
Yeah.
right? But it's true. It's true. It's like you can't ignore what's going on. Like you can't just dive into this and think it's going to be unicorns and rainbows, but then not realize that you're going to have these hurdles and landlocked issues and like you said, multi generational families. It's crazy what's out there, but just pay attention to it. And Kendall is seasoned in this. He sees what's going on. He sees what the other investors are going through, and it's marvelous to see. Kendall, the brilliance of Kendall LeJeune comes into the mindset and building that culture of excellence, right? And that's what I really want you to stress to people about how to do it, what to do. So let's talk about that, the mindset and the mental challenges when it comes to land and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So, I think that one of the issues that a lot of people have when I see that they are, maybe they've done a couple of land deals and now they want to start getting more consistent with their land deals. They want to create an actual business. Someone that I really admire and look up to, I've had this conversation with him, Logan Fulmer.
Yes.
He has a fantastic term that he calls like people that just kind of are doing like a deal here, a deal there, but not having a consistent business. He calls those deal shops. There's a difference between having a deal shop and having a consistent business that has systems and processes. And I think that it's really important to recognize the difference between those two, because it takes a different type of owner, right? It takes a
Yes.
different type of owner to have a business compared to a deal shop. And the mindset around that is, when you're in a deal shop and you're just like trying to grind it out and just get a deal and just throw stuff at the wall, whatever sticks. The difference is you're doing whatever it takes and you're kind of wearing all of the hats, and it's spread, your focus and attention is spread everywhere and just trying to play whack-a-mole to get the deal done. Whereas whenever you have a business that is a consistent functioning business that's getting you consistent deals a month, it's really difficult to do that without setting up systems and processes that automate the way that you do the business. And I think that that's a completely different mindset, right? Like, you have to now be thinking about, well, what is the plan for our business? What are the goals? What is my company culture? Who are the people that I'm going to bring on? How am I going to train those people? How am I going to manage those people? It's a different type of mental state that you have to be in when you approach your business versus, I just have to get these deals done, right?
Right. Yeah. Instead of it treating it as just going after everything and having it just be total chaos, you're reining in the chaos. But as soon as you start scaling your team and growing your team, they can't read your mind. They can't tap into what you know, and they can't there may be things they don't know how to explain. And that definitely comes down to the training, that comes down to writing out your standard operating procedures, that comes down to having difficult conversations in the moment and addressing it, which is what we do all the time. We're always having those conversations because you can't let it go a week or 2 weeks. It doesn't have the same application and reinforcement, right? So we're always having those conversations. And like you said, like you got to be prepped, and you got to be prepped and ready to overcome challenges with growing your team, hiring people, scaling, and all of that comes with having that business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head when you said earlier, organized chaos. And I definitely think that there's a season for that, right? When you're first starting out, you're trying to get your feet underneath you. There's definitely a season for organized chaos, and to, be take all the messy action that you possibly can to get some type of traction. But then there has to be a point, if you want to progress to a business owner, where you're now creating systems and processes and consistent business flow, where now you're being a lot more intentional, right? So you go from organized chaos to intentionality and really setting intention. And I think I'm going to give another shout out here to my brilliant friend and owner of Supercharged Offers, Alicia Jarrett.
Yes.
She is
Love that.
absolutely incredible. We can geek out about this topic for hours at a time, but she has a great analogy that building a business is very much like flying a plane while you're trying to build the plane, right? And so I love that, because it's so true. You're trying to do the business of the business, right? Like, you're trying to flip the land, you're trying to wholesale the houses, whatever it is, but then you're also trying to work on the vehicle that's doing that at the same time. And you kind of have to have this balance between both of those. And I think that it's really important to be intentional about what you're building. And I've seen lots of times when people say, because you mentioned hiring, we'll talk about that, because I could talk about that forever. But I see so many people say, hey, I don't like getting on the phone with sellers, and so I can get a VA to do that, right? And the answer is yes, you can get a virtual assistant to do anything that you train them to do. But again, kind of borrowing what Alicia says, is that how do you know what's good if you haven't done it and been able to at least be proficient at it, right? At some
Right.
point, as business owners, we always want to hire people and train them to get to a point where they are better than we are at those individual tasks. I mean, that's how businesses grow. But at the end of the day, when you're first starting out, you're bringing people onto your team, it's not really outsourcing. It's adding to your team so then they can help you to do more things in your business, not so you don't have to do something, right? And that's a very different mindset from, well, I'm just going to hire someone and plug them in. Because guys, I got to tell you, bringing someone on your team, and Al, you know all about this, I'm sure of it. It's a full-time job because now you
Yes.
have to train them. You have to make sure that they're a good fit. You have to make sure that you're managing them, holding people accountable, sharing your vision. I mean, there's so many different things that go into bringing a team member on that if you falter in any one of those things, like, it can be a disaster. So I think it's important that you understand what is the mission of your business, what's your vision of your business, what are those core values? Like, I think, like, in my business, professionalism, excellence, customer service, those are sort of the values that that really just kind of, I guess it would be, it informs the lens that we do everything through. And if we're not hiring people to fit that, gosh, we're in for a world of hurt, I've learned. So
Oh yeah, and like you just said, when it comes to and that's all culture right there, right? When it comes to the standards that are set, the expectations that are set with the team, the bar cannot be lowered. Um, at least for me in my office, we're always talking about accountability, right? Owning up to what's being done, what wasn't done, taking the responsibility, right? That's a big thing for me because if I was in that position, I'd be taking responsibility. I'd be accountable for what is being done, and I expect that of others in the team. And being able to provide the kind of customer service that I would provide, I expect them to do the same, if not more. And it's like you said, there are certain values that you have to instill in the team that maybe they don't inherently know, intuitively know, but you know. And so when you're growing that team, like you said, you have to do that. And also, like you said, when I first started growing the team, I viewed it as, oh great, now I don't have to do that and we're done. All right, now you do everything.
right.
Which had its ups and downs to that. The upside was taking the tricycle wheels off and just going, and they're all over the place, and they're going to learn trial by fire, right? Which is kind of good because at least they can see that I'm not the crazy one. When things, crazy situations pop up, they're going to see it themselves. The downside is they've never been through it before, so you could be setting them up to fail. But you're always there for them, right? So I had to go through that for a while because I thought, oh, I'm gonna let them do everything, and oh great, now I can finally do all this other stuff. But you can't, like Kendall, like you said, you got to be there with them. Like, just because you hire somebody doesn't mean you've let go completely of that role. You have to know what's going on. My team knows I know everything in my files, right? You can't just let them do everything. You got to know everything. And so I love everything that you said when it comes to just growing that team. And like you said, building that culture of excellence, right? Like, you want to do that in your business, whether it's land business. And I know for you, building that culture in VAs, that's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. I had a really fantastic interview with Mike Balcom about this topic last week, and uh, he had so many really great insights. But there is an inherent challenge when you're talking about creating cultures of excellence in remote teams because you're not in the same building with these people, right? Also, lots of times your virtual assistants, if I know a lot of people hire virtual assistants from the Philippines or maybe from South America. Those are all different, cultures that have different values. And so it's really important that you have a really clear understanding of what it is you're trying to do in your business. That way you can help sort of you can help to develop that and identify that and define it for your virtual assistants, right? And so one of the things that I think a lot of people overlook is that we get so fixated on the deal, right? Like the numbers of the deal and like the strategies and the techniques and how do we get the deal done, that lots of times we forget that this is a people business. We have customers. We have two sets of customers. We have a customer on the seller side and we have a customer on the buyer side. And if you're not thinking about what is the customer experience? What is the customer journey? How do they feel about the company and what we're doing and how we do things? Then I think that you're missing a big opportunity to be competitive in our market, because that's what sets you apart. What is their experience with you? So many times, we've gotten deals where our bid was actually lower than someone else's, but because our process made the seller to feel so much more comfortable, they liked us, and all of that comes from making sure that you build a culture in your business that your team members understand that if customer first is a value, then we need to operate as customer first in all things that we do. So one of the things that we do, just to kind of keep ourselves accountable, is every week on our team meetings, we have a section of our meeting where everyone goes around the room or goes around the virtual room and they share what was something that they saw another team member do that upheld one of our core values. So it might be something like, one of my team members may say, "Hey, I saw Ella when she interfaced with the title company. She went above and beyond to get the title company something that they needed before they even asked." And so it made the process a lot smoother. And so by asking your team members to recognize it in other people, not only does it hold other people accountable, but it helps to sort of ingrain, what does it look like? What does really, really good customer service look like? What does excellence really look like in other people? And then they start putting that into their own flow. And so it's really cool to see. But again, it comes back to that mindset. Like, you're not even like, when I first started and I was just a deal shop and trying to just get deals to happen, there was no way that I was thinking, well, how does my customer feel about the signing process of my purchase agreements, right?
Right.
So being intentional, that's a completely different mindset, different type of thinking.
Yeah, and going off that, building that culture, you start hearing the feedback that comes from clients and why they love working with you, or what did they enjoy about the conversation. And one thing that I've instilled with the team is thoroughness.
Mm,
So I don't know if it's just because I've been through, I mean, how many probates or how many different situations I've been through that I guess dedicated myself to that, because I'm also going through all the angles. If this, then that. If not this, then that. Down the whole tree. And even recently, somebody after the call was like, "Thank you for being so thorough." Because lawyers, they're not thorough on things. So when you're thorough, people feel fulfilled with that conversation, and they know they're going to come back to you, or maybe it will be a referral somewhere else. And so those are the little things that uh, we talk about all the time. I wish I could do team meetings every week. That'd be great. But we do have those conversations, and I'll say, "Hey, this is what's working. You gotta keep doing this." And I love that you're doing that with your VA team, like going around, having somebody talk about who's doing great with it. I mean, that's so great, because that's going to try elevating the other people to do greatness, right?
yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of little things that we pick up on as humans when we're in the same room together. Uh, you know, You might have a passing conversation with someone if you're in the same office. You know more about their lives. You see pictures on their desk of their family. But in a virtual setting, we don't have that, right? And so I have to be really intentional about making space and making room for that. So, starting every meeting with like, give me a highlight from your weekend. It needs to be something personal, right? Like share a picture of your family. Oh, they went to some amusement park. Let us see your family so everyone can see like this is who you're working for,
Yeah.
right? And so I do think it requires you to be a little bit more intentional about creating that in your team. But I love the thoroughness. That's so important because a confused mind says no, and a confused mind won't sign, and a confused mind will not refer. And so I love the thoroughness.
Yeah, I think it works. And I feel like all of this piles into the leadership side, right? All of this wouldn't happen if you didn't instill the leadership in a business, right? And in land, what does the leadership part of this look like? Like it's holding the team meetings, it's holding the accountability, but the leadership side, the most important part.
Yeah. So, I think it's really important. I've mentioned the word intentional, a couple of times so far in this conversation. I think it's really important as the owner of a company, as the leader of the business, you're setting the vision, right? So having goals of like, hey, listen, we're trying to hit, $1 million in net profit this year. We're trying to do X number of deals, whatever those tangible goals are, making sure that you're sharing that with your team and giving them some type of ownership in those goals. And so, we have a structure where when we hit our Q1, 2, 3, 4 goals, yearly goals, that there's an additional bonus that the team gets to share. And that's really important for them to have a reminder of like what are they working towards, and that they have a shared bonus, right? It's a shared goal. And so getting them to understand what we're doing versus like you're just one little cog in the wheel and all you do is scrub lists, right? Well, why are they scrubbing the list? They have to know the whole sort of overview so that they feel like they are part of the team, because they are. It's really important that they know that they're part of a team that's doing something bigger than just a little cog that they're doing. And so I think from a leadership standpoint, really identifying what are my goals? How do I want my customers to feel? How do I want my team members to feel? Right? That
Right.
is so important. Um, when you're building out any type of culture, I think it's extremely important to share a vision with them. So,
Yeah. And that right there, sharing the vision with them, right? Where are we going? Right. A lot of times they think they're just working in a job. I don't look at it as a job, right? I don't look at what they are doing with me as a job. We're doing it together, and there is purpose and vision to where we're going. And so I talk about that with them even at the end of the year. I had a conversation about that. I'm like, this is the idea. We got to we got to keep moving in this direction. Things will flow in, and we just grow from there. This is not just job, right? This is
yeah,
growth. And
absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
huge. It's
It's
huge.
it's so huge. And I think that of course, not everyone on your team is going to be so jazzed about like, oh, we get to do probate today, or oh yeah, we get to do land today. Like some members of my team, like land doesn't really excite them, but it's important as a leader to find out what does motivate them and what does excite them, right? And so I think it's really easy as entrepreneurs for us to forget that like, oh, not everyone loves our baby, our business the way that we do. And so we have to make it relevant to them. So what makes what's relevant to a lot of people? It's the income that they can make and what that income will do with their family. And so we'll talk about that. Hey, what are you going to do with your bonus? Oh, I'm going to go on a vacation. Where are you going to go on a vacation to? Tell us all about it. So they share their own personal vision. And just by sharing their personal vision, that allows other people to be like, oh, hey, Mark is counting on me to help him to take his family to the amusement park, something like that, right? And
Right.
so I think that that's really important as well.
Yeah. It all pieces together when it starts with you, and it starts with the building blocks to what your team is doing, and how do you instill these visions? How do you instill the words that will define the culture, and making sure that everybody's sticking with it, and it's everything. And Kendall, I think it's great what you're doing with your team, and virtually. I mean, my team's virtual too, so I know what that's like. But you know, they're here in the United States. They're not like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
another country, but it's crazy. So, I gotta say, all this is awesome, and we're saving the best for last before we get to the number one lead source, because everybody's got to stick around. I wanted to do a little roll call before we get to my signature questions. Yeah, we're doing signature questions for season 5, when I'm going to put the guest on the hot seat for some things that we haven't talked about yet, or maybe one thing he's talked about. But just going through some roll call. I love seeing Teresa. Teresa, welcome back. I know you've probably been having this date on the calendar. It's probably been pinging in a reminder for the from the iPhone. I love it. So great to see you here. Kevin's watching. D's watching. My man Kyle Vreeland's watching. Kyle, if you aren't getting into investing after watching Kendall, or thinking about land, you got to check this out, right? This is what it's about. Like, everybody's getting into some different space, and I know you're going to do it one day. But working and learning from people like this is huge. Keep watching, man. I love that you're watching, Kyle. I love it. John, what's going on, John? I haven't seen John in a while. Hope all's well. Yeah, hope all's well with you, man. Hope everything's great. Nick's watching. He said, "This is awesome. Kendall LeJeune is the real deal. My clients close deals all the time using his strategy." Boom. Right there. Look at that. John Ramos, he said, "Consistency and determination around my craft and niche of pulling lists that people aren't touching." I think that went to what's working on the left-hand column. And yeah, I mean, hey, look, a lot of people are, whether they're watching live, we go live Wednesdays at 9, but a lot of people are also listening later on, Kendall, and they're hearing the different strategies and tactics that guests bring on the show. And I mean, you're bringing a valuable information for everybody, and I know people are going to keep listening, watching, and that's what matters, right? Signature questions, season 5,
Let's do.
right? So here we go. What is your favorite real estate investing book?
Ooh, my favorite real estate investing book. So I read a ton, but I do not read a lot of real estate uh, kind of books. I like to look and borrow from other different industries and different niches. Right now, I mean, not just right now, but I am a huge Alex and Layla Hormozy fan. So right now I'm looking at this $100 million offers book by Alex Hormozy.
Cool.
This is one of my favorite books because I can look at it and say, okay, how do I apply this to land? And how do what's my version of this? And so many great fundamentals and strategies in there. So not technically real estate investing, but there's so much applicable information in there.
I love it. We'll go one step further. Forget the real estate investing book side. Like, what would be like the book that people should read right now?
Yeah, so for mindset and just leadership and how to structure, we've done a lot of talking about teams and how just to grow as a leader of teams and how to build out your business. This book, Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. My good friend Callan Faulkner suggested this book to me, and I have been loving it. And it really goes into how to free up yourself from doing tasks that are preventing you from doing like the really high leverage things, right? And so things like how to look for an executive assistant, what type of person that you need, what kinds of things they can do for you. And there's a lot of information in there about how to make sure that it's someone that's compatible with your vision. And so it goes a lot into how to build out your empire, which is amazing. It's so good. Check it out.
Sounds like a loaded book right there. Sounds like a book that a lot of people need right now.
So good. So
I
good.
love it. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
What characteristics do you want in new hires?
Oh, that's good. I want them to have an open growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. I want them to, so the biggest difference is that I want them to view life as it's abundant and it's not a zero sum game. Someone doesn't have to lose for someone else to win. This type of mentality will tell me that someone is open to growing and learning and being coached. And those types of characteristics, you know, you can't buy that. So I will always go with someone who has a growth mindset and may not be as skilled as someone else that has a fixed mindset but has like a lot of training, because I can train that person and I know that they're going to be a really valuable member to the team. So growth mindset is probably the biggest factor that I look for when adding someone to my team.
That's great. And really it's kind of a shot in the dark, right? Cuz like you don't know how the performance is going to be once they start. But you at least have that characteristic that you look for, because hopefully it translates into them fitting in that role. It's a really tough question. You
Yeah.
never know how it's going to work out, but you just have to trust your instinct and what you believe in. And I love that answer right there. It's great.
Yeah. One of the things that we do, I'll give you this nugget. And I know a lot of people do this, but it's something that I love, is to help you to figure out what kind of person you're dealing with. When someone applies and they get to the sort of towards the end of the interview process, I always have them just do a free Enneagram test. So I know like what is their Enneagram number. And that will tell me a lot about like what their motivations are, how they think, like what's their motivation really. And I'll say it has to be compatible with mine, because if it's not, then that's a pretty good indicator that we might, not work so well together. So Enneagram, definitely take a look at it. It's a free test, takes a couple of minutes, but it can give you a lot of really good insight.
Yeah, you got to have that compatibility. Otherwise,
Have to,
it's not
have to.
going to work. You got to
That's
have
right.
it.
That's right.
Another shot in the dark, because you just don't know what it's going to translate like long term. Just have
Yes,
to hope.
yes. Hire slow, fire fast. That's
Yep.
my goal,
Yeah. I hear you there. Here we go with this one. If you could go back and start your business again, what would you do differently?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, if I could go back and start my business over, I think I would embrace messy action a lot sooner, right? My background is I was a high school band director. And so as a teacher, I love learning, I love being super organized, and if it doesn't fit the plan and if I can't see the very end step, it makes me very uncomfortable, right? And so that prevented me from taking messy action for the longest time, right? Like I didn't know what I didn't know. So then that kind of paralyzed me, and then it didn't let me, take some swings that I should have taken. And so that's something that I would have done a lot sooner, is just be okay with knowing what the next step looks like, and then execute that step and then worry about the next step later, right? That would be the big one.
I feel like for you, that was embracing being uncomfortable, because you would have to like change what you're normally doing, and then shifting into this wild, chaotic world that you're like, well, wait a second, like my brain doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
like you just have to like channel that uncomfortability ness right there, and just like, deal with it. Deal with it.
Yeah. Embrace is the word. It really is. And I think that, it's not so much of like, oh, now the uncomfortable has become comfortable, because it never is comfortable. I've just learned to embrace it, and it's just part of what we do now. So like it's familiar. I see it, it's sitting with me. I'm like, great, here you are again. Great, let's move forward. Right. So
Yeah.
it never becomes comfortable. It's just familiar.
Yeah. Hey, I love it. I mean, with these questions, it's definitely the personal preference and the personal side, and it's about how it works for you, right? Not everybody's going to be the same personality, the same work ethic, the way we go about business. Everyone's going to be different. And so, when you hear these questions, you're like, well, wait a second. Just because it works for Kendall, maybe it works differently for you.
Absolutely.
And so that's another takeaway from all this. But I got to tell you all, we always save the best for last, or at least on season 5 of the Al Nicoletti Show, we're saving the best for last because we still got everybody tuned in. Everybody's loving Kendall's episode. And the best for last is the number one lead source that nobody is paying attention to right now. Kendall, can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go all in now. The number one lead source that I think that not enough people are paying attention to is the power of like American cold callers. And this is why. So in my land business, I know that a lot of the infill lot owners that I'm talking to, those people usually have bought those properties with the intention to retire one day, right? So lots of times these people have owned the property for like 20 years and they just never retired. Retired there. Life took them different places. So these are older people. We've talked about the fact that a confused mind always says no. And so with all of the different like scams out there and just all of these different things that are targeting that age demographic, it's so important that they understand what the cold caller is saying. It's important that they are familiar and feel comfortable with what they're saying, how they're saying it, the language they're saying it, because if they are confused or if they feel like this has any whiff of a scam, like it's just not going to work. And so, I have done cold calling before. I have used it before. It worked okay, but it wasn't until we started using American cold callers. Specifically, Nicholas Nick turned me on to this. It wasn't until we did that the leads just really started flowing. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that. And so again, I will shout it from the rooftops. If you are looking to get fast leads, you've got to look into American cold callers.
Love it right there. Nicholas Nick. I mean, he's crushing it right now. Lead mining pros. You can't miss
Yeah.
it. And
Fire.
and like
Fire.
and like Kendall's talking about, pay attention like what's working. That's working. And outbound marketing is still king and still crushing it, even in 2024. Was in 2019 and still is now. So, Kendall, dropping gems, dropping lots of great nuggets for everybody to pay attention to. I love it. And the interaction again is amazing on the show. We love the guests that are always dropping comments, and people are dropping comments. And gotta say, it's been awesome having you on here. I mean, I haven't seen you since May.
Yeah.
And even,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just so great that you get to come on here and drop your knowledge on this. And Kendall, as I do with all my guests on the Al Nicoletti Show, I do a segment called Final Words, Final Thoughts. Anything that you want to talk about that you haven't talked about yet, any parting words, any wisdom you can share. It could be one word, it could be a whole sentence, you name it. We've heard it all. As I do on my show, Final Words, Final Thoughts, Kendall LeJeune.
Embrace the hard. I think that that's really important, is to embrace it. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. And so it's not easy, but it doesn't mean that it's not simple. It's a simple process. What we do is not rocket science, but I think it's important to recognize like, oh, this is going to be hard and it's going to be harder than I thought. And that's okay, because you will just get better. Things don't ever get easier. You will just get better. And those hard things will still be hard to a lot of people. So don't feel like you'll ever be outcompeted if you're constantly growing.
Love it. And we're going to leave it right there. Kendall, thanks so much again for coming on the Al Nicoletti Show.
Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mentioned earlier, before we actually started that, it's so fun to be on the other side of the mic. Usually I'm the one interviewing. And so it was really cool to just chat with you, man. It's been a while.
I know. And it's great. Like we have that dialogue, right? And that's what's so great about the guest. Great guests like you, we have that conversation. We provide the value to everyone, and you crushed it tonight. I love that you got to come on. Thank you again for being on the show, man.
Thanks so much. It was an honor. And I love the new studio digs.
Thank you.
Fantastic, beautiful, so good. Thanks for having me, Al.
Thank you, Kendall. Really appreciate it, man. I'll see you soon. You know that.
Absolutely. Wishing you all the best on your season 5.
Thank you. Thank you. It'll be a great one. Appreciate that, man.
Will. All right, man. Take care.
We'll talk soon. All right, everybody. We got our first episode of season 5 in the books. If you missed any of the episode with Kendall, you got to go back and watch it. Check it out. Scan the QR code. Find us on all your favorite podcasting apps, whether it's YouTube, whether you find us on Facebook or Spotify and iTunes. You all know we go live every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, and we always want everyone to interact. I mean, the interaction tonight, once again, people are dropping comments, people are asking questions, and you can see where we're going with the show. And every week, we're rolling out another guest, somebody else that's going to bring the value to everybody out there. And I got to say, again, with the studio, I forgot all about Tommy. The studio. So Taylor helped me design the studio, and Tommy Masters, shout out to Tommy Masters. Tommy painted the studio, helped drill in the panels, helped put the sign up. What a mission that thing was. And that took like 2 or 3 times. But at the end of the day, it all comes together, and we could not be more excited. My whole team could not be more excited to be rolling the show out. And we're here next week, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss it with McLean Bobbitt. That's going to be fire. I'll see you all next week, Wednesday. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.